This episode of Gather and Go is sponsored by the Malta Tourism Authority. Malta and its sister islands Gozo and Comino are located in the heart of the Mediterranean. The archipelago is known for being the first European nation to embrace Christianity. The Maltese themselves are well known for their deep multimillennial Catholic faith. Malta is living evidence of the 2,000-year-old history of Christianity from its origins. Faith, history, culture, and tradition blend to form the unique history of the ancient archipelago. Visit Malta to explore more history on a pilgrimage and learn more at visitmalta.com. Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to Gather and Go, the podcast that helps you plan, promote, and lead better trips. I'm Brian Jewell. I am your host. I am thrilled, as always, to have you joining me today. And of course, our promise to you is that we're going to do everything we can to make this investment of your time worth your while. Now, today, we're going to do that through a featured conversation with Rebekah Snider of Visit Milledgeville. Rebekah has been a leader in destination marketing for a long time, and she is going to share some of the hard-won lessons that she has learned in her career to help make all of us better leaders. You know, the fact is, if you are growing a tour company, if you are working in any kind of tourism endeavor, sooner or later, you are probably going to have team members, and those people can be very helpful to you in your mission. They could also really drag you down if you don't lead them the right way. So in this conversation, Rebekah is going to share how a crisis taught her to lead a multi-generational team. She's going to tell us about the key characteristics she looks for in hiring tourism professionals. And she's going to share how to have tough leadership conversations with grace and empathy. That is a conversation you're definitely going to want to hear. Before we get there, though, let's start with some travel news you may have missed. Social media has become the country's top travel inspiration tool. According to research from travel agency tech firm Amadeus, social media has become America's primary source for travel inspiration, with 34% of U.S. travelers using social platforms to look for places to stay, flights, and even destinations. This represents a 21% increase over the last year. In the survey, which included responses from 2,000 travelers, social media beat out friends and family, TV, and advertising. The study found Generation X is using social media the most to help inspire their trips, with 30% growth in usage. The report also shows that AI is rapidly growing as another way for travelers to find inspiration. 17% of U.S. travelers are now using platforms like ChatGPT and Perplexity to help find travel ideas, which is a 30% growth in usage over the past year. Baby boomers had the highest growth in usage of AI as a travel tool in the past year, with a 60% increase. Additionally, 68% of respondents said they would be willing to pay a fee for an AI assistant that offers them trip information. Well, before we move on, I want to take a minute and share just a little bit of news from us. We have a fantastic new resource available for you on our website. This is our buyer's guide for the group travel industry. We publish this guide every year in the September issue of the Group Travel Leader. And if you didn't already get it in print, well, you can get it online right now at grouptravelleader.com/buyer's guide. Now, why do you want to read the buyer's guide? Well, this is the project every year that we pour ourselves into really all throughout the summer, coming up with the very best travel intelligence and analysis to help you build a better travel organization as you look ahead into 2026. In this year's buyer's guide, you're going to find interviews with top tourism leaders about the most pressing issues facing our industry today. We also have a really great in-depth first-person account about the intersection between student travel and European river cruising. That is a fascinating story. And we're bringing you a comprehensive guide to using artificial intelligence as a group travel planner. Now, as always, The Buyer's Guide is absolutely free. You can get it right now at grouptravelleader.com/buyer's guide. You don't even have to register or give us an email address. It's all right there on that page. I'll drop a link to it in the show notes to make it easy for you to find. And while you're on that page, you can actually see the content from past year's buyer's guides as well. So this is a great one to bookmark in your browser. Come back to from time to time as you have questions, as you are working on, challenging situations, trying to grow your business, trying to figure out what's next. The Buyer's Guide page is a great place to see what the very smartest people in the industry have to say about these issues. And I hope you will check it out and take advantage of this great free resource. Now it's just about time for us to get into our featured conversation with Rebekah Snider. Before we do, let me remind you that you can find a wrap-up of the most important things that Rebekah had to say in the show notes for this episode. Show notes, of course, are the text that shows below the audio player wherever you are listening to this podcast. We have show notes for every episode we've ever done available at grouptravelleader.com/podcast. And I hope you will stick around to the end of the interview because I'm going to recap some of the most important things Rebekah had to say, give you some of my reactions to them as well. And then after that, I hope you will stick around because we're going to tackle what might be the most important question we have ever tackled on this podcast. You don't want to miss that. We'll be right back with Rebekah Snider. All right, everybody, I want to take a minute to tell you about Malta. This archipelago in the Mediterranean is a living museum of the 2,000-year history of Christianity. When the Apostle Paul was shipwrecked there in AD 60, the islanders were impressed by his delivery of the gospel and the miracles he performed, and were baptized as Christians. This heritage places these islands among the most important archaeological centers of the ancient Christian world. Now, you can see some of this history in the unique Christian catacombs, a hallmark of prevailing customs during the early Christian era that make the Maltese religious heritage unique. And many Malta residents are deeply devoted to the Virgin Mary. Luke was shipwrecked in Malta with Paul, and his gospel account is full of details of Mary's life. Historic artifacts and oral traditions demonstrate that the Maltese have remained Marian devotees ever since. Plan your trip to Malta to explore more history. For more information, go to visitmalta.com. All right, everybody. My guest today has been a tourism marketing professional for over 18 years. She has spent her career promoting travel to destinations throughout Georgia, working with the Georgia Department of Economic Development, as well as visitors bureaus in Lawrenceville and Clayton County. Today, she's the executive director of Visit Milledgeville, where she oversees the organization's operations, budget, and staffing. Rebekah Snider, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Ron. Really appreciate you having me today. I am a huge fan of Gather and Go.
It means the world to me. I'm so glad to have you here. You and I figured out that we have crossed paths way back early in our careers, kind of come up through tourism, sort of in the same time period. And I'm really excited to talk to someone who I knew as kind of a young up-and-comer and who's now a leader in tourism, because I think there's a lot of us who, lo and behold, we are kind of in that mid-career point in life, and all of a sudden people expect us to know stuff and to be competent at stuff and even have to sort of lead other people, which is what I really want to focus on today. So can you kind of, for people that haven't met you before, tell us how you arrived at a point in your career where you're actually leading people?
Sure. I think a lot of fantastic mentorship and a little bit of dumb luck as well. I ended up in this industry after interning with the Chamber of Commerce. And 18 years later, I think it's safe to say that this is definitely a passion field for me. I spent the first 11 years of my career really working on the marketing side. And through that time, I gained a lot of great mentorship with some of my prior bosses, some of the relationships I had on boards I served on. And I was fortunate that when my predecessor retired from her position, she and I had served on several boards together. And she really encouraged me to pursue an opportunity as the executive director and leader for Visit Milledgeville. And it has been incredibly rewarding.
I wonder if there are some traits of those mentors that that meant so much in your career that you can look back on now and say, the way that person led me in this area or the way they encouraged me in that ended up being so formative to who I am today and how I, represent my area today.
Very much so. And I think one of the things that I'm very conscious of is a lot of my team is very young and new to this industry. And I look back at how my mentors really really fostered my passion for tourism and how they took the time to just really invest in teaching me the tools that I was going to need and use. Things like STR, things like understanding budgeting and what it means when you're looking at a profit and loss sheet versus the balance sheet. Things that were not necessarily a part of my role or function at the time as I was invested in marketing, but things that I didn't realize at the time that I would be pursuing later in a leadership role and be so incredibly grateful for.
Yeah, that's great. It is interesting how few of us were ever taught to read a balance sheet in college, right? You you didn't learn that in your marketing courses, but yet here you are. And I'd say most leaders, certainly have to deal with finances of their organizations in addition to so many other things. You work with boards, you work with community, you work with employees. So you're almost leading in a 360-degree direction, right? I mean, you've got a whole lot of different people to think about.
You really do. And, I will just share that, in reflecting on my time leading, I have really realized, I read this quote that somebody had shared that was talking about how many leaders enter not necessarily being prepared for leadership, but that they were hired into a leadership role because they were good at what they were doing prior to that role. And that resonated so much with me. I feel like I kind of lucked my way into a leadership position. But once I got here, I realized, so much of my career and so much of my foundational education was vested in marketing and not in leadership. And it really has challenged me to pursue educational opportunities and relationships that would help me grow my own leadership understanding and success.
Yeah. And that's so much better than the other way some people go when they get promoted to that leadership role because they were good at, a certain skill, and then they never get better at leadership. And so you end up with one of those, what do they say? People rise to the level of their incompetence, and you don't want to be that kind of leader for sure. So has there ever been a time since you started, really having to lead that you've struggled with some imposter syndrome? Like, oh, these people are looking at me to be a leader and I don't feel like one.
Oh, definitely. When I joined our team, now I was 33 years old and I had a team of 20 people, and the closest person to my age was in their 50s. And
wow.
I realized they had so much more leadership experience, so much more industry experience, real life experience than I had at that point in time. And interestingly enough, on my third week on the job, a man robbed a bank here in town and came to hide from the police here at the visitor center. And
You're kidding.
Think it was so wild, once in a lifetime. Like, we're the sweetest, most charming community, totally unexpected and out of the blue. And I think that day really showed me 3 weeks into the job, I was now responsible for an entire team where I needed to think about things that were completely outside of my wheelhouse. And that at the end of the day, I was responsible for keeping our team safe. And while that situation resolved itself in the best possible way for the worst possible situation, I think it really showed me very early on the challenges of leadership and the responsibility that comes along with leadership, and some of my lack of preparation for that space. But it also gave me a drive to be able to get it right and to do it well, because I do care very deeply about our team and our success.
Tell us about kind of the composition of your team. You said when you came in, a lot of people were older than you. Is it still the case, or how has that team evolved to, reflect the spectrum of ages in the workplace these days?
Sure. Our team has evolved. Our youngest staff member right now is 20 years old. Our oldest staff member right now is 80 years old. So it is a very diverse workforce when it comes to age. And I think that in dealing with such a multi-generational workforce, I have found a few different things to be successful. One, recognizing that at the heart of it, we all kind of want the same thing at the end of the day. We all want to go to a job we enjoy. We all want to go somewhere that we feel respected. And we all want to work somewhere where we feel like people have compassion and empathy for us. We've walked a lot of journeys in those multiple generations, whether it's been weddings, new babies, divorces, the loss of parents, a spouse that might be incredibly ill. We are walking a lot of things together in our 40 hours a week. And in looking at that, I think that, the commonality among all ages is we all want compassion. But I think the thing that I have found that separates us a lot of times is communication style. We all need to be communicated with and listened to, but we just, in fact, self-evaluated our team in the last week and looking at what people's personal communication style preference is, because that is very different depending on what the generation is. And I think as a leader, as I look at how do we best lead this team, it's recognizing not all two people may need the same form of communication and may need the same form of technology. So we work to adapt where needed.
Yeah. I want to talk more about the communications thing, but it struck me when you were, describing the generations and how you lead them. You didn't say, well, I give everybody my expectations and my KPIs, and then we have accountability meetings, and then we have reviews, and I have this kind of level of expectation. You said, people get married, people have babies, people get divorced, people lose loved ones. Do you take sort of a person first approach to people? Like, you are a person with a personal life, and how do you interact with that person through those things in their personal life that not everybody wants to share at work?
I really think so, in terms of looking at even professional development. Like, I'm reading Simon Sinek's Good Leaders Eat Last right now, which is about servant leadership, which I think is a passion of mine. And recognizing that at the end of the day, we don't know what people are carrying when they walk into our office. And while KPIs and strategies, goals, and tactics matter, of course, as an organization, and I think we'll get into some of that maybe later. I think we have to connect with the heart of who someone is first a lot of times. And, I think, to me, it is very important that our team feel like their personal and professional needs are being met within our organization. And I will say, I feel that need to give grace because I was given that grace. I have two boys. One of my boys arrived at 28 weeks. And my time at the Department of Economic Development, they showed me such grace and such compassion. And I think it has only shown me how that when you extend that same grace and compassion to the people that you work with, they want to work harder for you because they buy into the support that you've given them.
Yeah. That's amazing. I love that. So on that topic of communication, you've got a 20-year-old, you got an 80-year-old. If you need to get everybody on the team, filled in on some new event that's coming out, or a policy change, or, something everybody needs to know, what is your strategy for communicating that in a way that is going to register with people all across that generational spectrum?
We've tried a variety of things. I mean, sometimes, honestly, it's pulling our entire team together in person to communicate if it's something as impactful as policy change. We tend to do that in person with our entire team, just because I feel like that also opens the door for people to ask questions. I feel passionate about transparency, and that when we are transparent and clear with our team members in the way that we communicate, it has helped in my office. It has helped people buy into our greater vision. But then for simple things, we might email out an update across the board, but we do recognize that there are some team members that may need an additional phone call to realize that they have an email sitting in their phone box or in their inbox. And, that's okay. We gain so much from having a multi-generational workforce that I feel like those little tiny things that might cost us some extra time are worth it for the experience that we gain.
Yeah, that's really valuable. So any leader does have to spend some time setting expectations. If you don't, you have chaos, right? And you don't achieve your mission. So what is your approach to setting expectations for team members? Do you tend to have the same expectations across the board for everybody? Are they really sort of customized to the person? Is there flexibility? Does it evolve over time?
I think it's all of the above. I think that there are some things that we set as a baseline. As a team, we work together to strategize for each year as it comes upon us. We set goals and tactics so that we can stay on task and on time. We usually work together, whether it is a monthly collaborative between certain team sets, or whether it's a quarterly check-in to make sure that we are in line with our goals and tasks. But, honestly, we've found that to be very successful. I have found that, people want to succeed at work. No one wants to be doing a bad job. And I think that when we are touching base and when we are connecting regularly and creating clarity, we find success.
Yeah, I love that. Now, again, every leader sooner or later is going to have a tough conversation with a team member, give them some correction, hold them accountable, hold their feet to the fire, and hopefully, give them a vision that is going to put them back on the path to success. I'd love to hear what your approach is to that. And if you have some examples of times where you've done that and the outcome has been the best it could be.
One of the things that I found on my leadership journey is Dave Ramsey has a process that he calls the pathway to performance. And thank you, Dave. It's helpful. But, when we get into situations where maybe our expectation is not aligning with the performance that we're seeing, we kind of lean on that pathway to performance. And really, I feel like essentially what that is it's just individual communication. It's a one-on-one to truly talk about what are our goals? How are we reaching these goals? Where do our tactics need to change? And then honestly, in any relationship, there are two sides to every story, right? And I spend a lot of time self-reflecting as well. Have I been clear? Was I holding the person accountable in the correct way? And recognizing, sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes the answer is no. And that we might need to adjust based on some of that self-reflection as well.
Yeah. What's an example of a time where you have realized oh, this person maybe didn't perform what I expected them to because I didn't make it clear what I expected?
Yeah. I think that is something that, especially in my early days, I learned pretty early on. We had a new position that we had opened on our team. And I think that person really wanted to succeed. And I think that I just was not being clear enough about what I considered the path to success being. And when we clarified that piece and really created some tactics around how we were going to achieve our goals, we actually performed so well that we had to soften that up a bit. Because again, I think most people want to be succeeding. Most people want to be achieving what you're asking. I think it's just recognizing the way I may be asking may not be the way somebody is understanding what they're listening to. And communication is about more than just dictating something to someone. It is about listening to what they have to say in response and making sure that the comprehension is there.
Yeah. So you can say it 3 times, but unless they can say it back to you in the same way, you may not have succeeded in communicating, even if you think you did.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, of course, there are going to be times when it just doesn't come together with that person. And it can be for all sorts of reasons. So in situations where the correction didn't take, the path to performance wasn't enough to get them back where they needed to be. Number one, how do you personally handle that? Because that's tough. How do you prepare yourself for saying, all right, I'm going to have to go have one of the hardest conversations that someone has ever had? How do you psych yourself up for that?
It's really tough. It's really emotional. I have had to let go of 4 people in my time in leadership. And every time it is very impactful to me personally. That is never the conclusion that we want to come to, but sometimes it is our reality. And I think that what I've learned is as long as we've enacted the pathway to performance, I am a firm believer in people should not be surprised to be let go. And I feel like that's been a tool that's helped to make sure no one is surprised. But also, that when that time comes, that we do that in a way that is respectful, in a way that is private, in a way that is quickly ripping that Band-Aid off as well. Because I feel like we don't draw that out with our team out of respect for them and out of respect for the fact that they may need to seek work quickly elsewhere. And I will say we've been able to maintain really good relationships, even with many of the people that we've let go.
Yeah. So, what's the key to that? Because so often you let somebody go and then they're bad mouthing you around town or whatever. And it's kind of the worst case scenario. So how do you let them go gracefully and still be friends and they hug you on the way out the door?
Mhm. I think a lot of times it's in the fact that they recognize it's not coming as a surprise. It's
Mm.
been a lead up where we've been defining things that have been maybe issues or goals that have not been met. And I think, a little bit of like seeing that writing on the wall. And I feel like at that point, people can usually respect the decision that we've had to come to. And sometimes even agree that, yes, maybe they are better suited to something else or serving elsewhere.
So on the brighter side, you get the opportunity to hire people. It sounds like you get the opportunity to give some people their first job, out of school, their first chance in tourism, which seems like a wonderful role to play in somebody's life. What are you looking for when you recruit and when you hire?
Sure. So we're looking for a few things when we hire, and it's so exciting. I love that we get the opportunity to invite young, fresh, vibrant talent into our workforce pool. And, we're really looking for, first and foremost, honestly, I'm looking for somebody that has a kindness to them
Mm,
and a relatability. I think that people do business with people that they like.
mm.
And I feel like it's hard to not like somebody that's just going to treat you with kindness and excellent customer service. And I think those things are important to our brand. Those things are important to hospitality, but they're also essential to the way that we do business in our community. We're looking for people that have good communication skills. And I think that, we can see that from our first interaction with somebody when they apply for a job and a cover letter and what their resume looks like. And then transitioning into things like phone calls and interviews and making sure that they're representing us in the way that we would want to be represented, making sure that, you know, as I'm traveling for my leadership position and in various capacities that I serve on other boards, I won't always be here. Does this person have the drive and the communication set to represent our organization in the way that we would so desire?
Yeah.
So, really, I think that, of course, we have goals for each individual position and the skill set that we hope that people have. But I have found that if we have somebody that's a good communicator and we have somebody that has a kindness and a warmth to them, we can usually teach and instruct them on this real skill set they're going to need. We just need sometimes what feel like very basic skills, but are actually kind of
Yeah.
hard to find.
It's amazing. Here's the secret, and please nobody get your feelings hurt. The day-to-day work of tourism is not that technically hard. Right. But having the personality and the kindness and the openness and the empathy to really resonate with people that is hard to find, and you can't teach it as a leader, right? Like they kind of have to come to you with that already built in.
Right. Exactly.
So in addition to your staff, you have a board. There's kind of a symbiotic relationship with your board. You lead them in many ways. You're also accountable to them.
Mhm.
You also have a community, and they look to you for leadership, but also they, I'm sure, have plenty to say about your leadership if they don't always like it. So how do you expand your leadership philosophy into those realms when you're not 100% in charge, but you have influence and you have a high degree of responsibility?
Well, I will say I have a fantastic board of directors, and I love my community so much. I am so lucky and fortunate. But as we look at how do we lead in that space, I think it's recognizing that the people that serve with us on our board are experts in their individual spaces, but they do lean on our team, and our community leans on our team to really be the experts when it comes to understanding the industry as a whole. So whether that's understanding trends that are taking place, or in our office, we work with more than 200 partners a year in our community, whether it's understanding what's going on with individual businesses or subsets of businesses. I think that what I've found to be successful is, leaning on research, leaning on consultants when we are not an expert in a space and might need additional support, leaning on bringing in or taking our board on a field trip so that they can talk to somebody that is really living in these spaces day to day, so that we have a greater understanding as a whole on how we're collectively impacting our community, the strategy we need to be working together to build, and how we can really kind of just continue to uplift. And we're doing this really heavily right now in the space of workforce, and I am very excited about what lies ahead in that area.
Yeah, that's an area of such need in our industry. So am I hearing you say that working with those groups, you don't need to be the person that shows up with all the answers and all the knowledge. You don't need to be the genius in the room, as long as you can show up and say, hey, we were stumped by this, so I've done a lot of research and here's what I found. Or let me introduce you to somebody who does know.
We're not the genius in the room. I mean, I think, Brian, I'm still learning so much. And I think that what I am passionate about is making sure that we've educated ourselves properly. So if we're reaching out into a space where maybe we don't have a skill set or haven't built a ton of experience, that we are at least coming from an educated perspective when we're talking with our community and our board members.
Can you think of anything leadership-wise that you've learned that you think would apply to anybody in tourism across the board, whether they're a tour operator, a meeting planner, a travel agent, that goes universally beyond the realm of destination marketing?
One thing that I really loved that I learned, and this came from, and I wish I could remember who, but it was from the Andy Stanley Leadership Podcast, is they posed this question that said, if you were to leave your organization tomorrow, what is the next person going to come in immediately behind you and fix and adjust? And then why? Wow. And then why aren't you fixing or adjusting that today? And that was a real eye-opener for me. It's something that as we reach the end of each year and are strategizing to the year ahead, I think about that at the end of every year and say, what went on or is going on right now that we need to be actively working to fix? And I think that sometimes when you're in the leadership space, you have a lot of control. And I'd be lying if I said my type myself didn't love that sometimes. But
right.
It gets really easy to listen to your own voice when we need to be listening to other voices. And I think that self-reflection on what would somebody else look into this organization and see as an area of adjustment really creates a lot of self-reflection that I really enjoy. And I really enjoy figuring out what that is and how to fix it. And I think that's something that, regardless of what you do and what your role is in the hospitality industry, if you think on that, I think you'll find something.
Yeah. Now you've got my mind racing about what are all the things that I need to get to work correcting when we're done here.
No pressure, Brian.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. So what is the best way for people to find you, follow you, learn more about Milledgeville, or generally kind of get in touch?
Well, I do have a LinkedIn. My full name, Rebekah Snider, is my LinkedIn account. People are welcome to follow me on there. And then I am at Visit Milledgeville, where my email is rebecca@visitmilledgeville.com. And I am happy to share anything. I've learned many lessons the hard way. And I am happy to save others that pain. If there are any questions, please feel free to reach out.
Yeah, excellent. We will link to those resources in the show notes so people can come straight to you. So before we let you go, we have some questions we ask everybody, and these are just for fun. So maybe you already know these questions if you've heard the podcast. But when you book travel, are you booking a window seat or an aisle seat?
Ooh, window seat.
Yeah, for the view or for the headrest?
For the view, and I'm only 5'4", so I don't need the aisle seat with the long legs.
So premium economy is not necessary for you.
It's not.
What is one thing in your carry-on that you wouldn't travel without?
I am going to say I went to Alaska last year for the first time, and I bought some compression bags, and holy cow, they changed my life. I was able to pack so much more, which was a really not good thing when Delta weighed my bag, but it was incredible in terms of having all the apparel I felt like I needed.
That's brilliant. I'm going to have to look those up. I think my wife needs those as well, for sure. What is something you've seen or done on the road that you wish you could go back and experience again with somebody you love?
Oh, wow. That's a lovely question. I think that I would really love to be able to, I'd love to go back to Alaska. Honestly, it was incredible. It was majestic.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's stark. It's so much of it is untouched, undiscovered. Yeah, really, really amazing place. Last question. If you had a free airline pass and a week with nothing else to do, where would you be headed next?
Ooh. I think that I would probably choose London. I would love to go to England. Haven't been there yet.
Yeah, I hear great things. So put those plans in the books, start saving your pennies, make it happen.
That's right. Exactly.
Excellent. Well, Rebekah, it's been wonderful to have you. Thanks so much for joining us and sharing so much of your wisdom.
Thank you so much, Brian. I really appreciate it.
Well, I sure hope you enjoyed that conversation with Rebekah as much as I did. Rebekah is an absolute delight and also has a lot of wisdom in the area of personal relationships and leadership. In fact, she had so much good stuff to say that I wasn't able to fit all of it here in the audio version of the podcast. But don't you fear, you can hear the entire conversation and see us as well on our YouTube channel. If you go over to YouTube and search Gather and Go, you'll find our channel for the podcast. And on that channel, you can see the entire uncut video of my interview with Rebekah. Now, when you watch the full interview, you are going to hear Rebekah's thoughts on the podcast and books she leans on for leadership growth. She's going to share how becoming a parent made her a better professional leader. And she's going to tell us about how she lets people go with dignity and compassion. Now, for all that content, you can head on over to our YouTube channel, or I'll also embed that video in the show notes on our website for this episode. You can find those and the notes for every episode we have ever done at grouptravelleader.com/podcast. Now, before we move on, I want to take a minute and hit a few of the highlights of what she said, just to make sure you don't miss some of these really key ideas. When we were talking about the challenges of leading a multi-generational team, Rebekah said, at the heart of it, we all want the same thing at the end of the day. We want to go to a job we enjoy, we want to feel respected, and we want to be somewhere where people have compassion and empathy for us. We are walking a lot of things together in our 40 hours a week, and the commonality among all ages is we all want compassion. She said, the thing that separates us sometimes is communication style. People's communication preferences can be very different depending on the generation. Two people may not need the same form of communication, and the same form of technology. I think Rebekah is really on to something here, regardless of the generation that you're a part of or that your coworkers or employees are parts of. We really all want a lot of the same things, which is to do great work with people we enjoy being around and to be valued for who we are and how well we do the work assigned to us. And I think a lot of us have a tendency to assume that our favorite communication style is the communication style that does, or at least should, work best for everyone. The reality for leaders is that it doesn't really matter what your communication style is. You need to get through to all of your team members in the style that works for them. If you don't, you're just not going to end up with good results. And that's not what you're trying to accomplish in your organization. And so taking some time to figure out how different people like to communicate, bearing in mind their age and their experience with technology and previous employment and expectations, that's going to go a long way to helping you figure out how best to lead your team. Now, when I asked Rebekah about those times that she has to have tough conversations with team members who aren't performing well, she said, in every relationship, there are two sides to every story. I spent a lot of time reflecting. Have I been clear? Was I holding the person accountable in the correct way? And recognizing sometimes the answer is yes and sometimes the answer is no. And we may need to adjust based on some of that self-reflection as well. She went on to say communication isn't just dictating to someone. It's about listening to what they have to say in response and making sure that the comprehension is there. Well, I really love this perspective. There's a lot of self-awareness in Rebekah's answer there. Sometimes team members don't perform well, not because they're incompetent, not because they don't care, not because they don't have the skills we need. Sometimes it's because we, as leaders, have not effectively communicated our expectations to them. Sometimes we haven't put the accountability mechanisms in place that we need to ensure that they are performing well. Sometimes we just haven't given them the resources they need to do the job in an effective way. And so before any difficult conversation with a team member, before any time that you go in with guns blazing or have a come to Jesus meeting, it's a good idea to have that conversation with yourself. Look back over your history with that person and say, is there any way that I'm the one to blame here? There's a high likelihood that the answer is yes, at least in part. And if that's the case, then that's going to inform your conversation and hopefully help you get on a pathway to better performance, not only for your team member, but for yourself as a leader as well. And finally, when I asked Rebekah how she goes about finding great people to work in her organization, she said, we're really looking first and foremost for somebody that has a kindness to them and a relatability. I think people do business with people they like. Those things are important to our brand and to hospitality. She said, we're looking for people that have good communication skills. We can see that from our first interaction with somebody when they apply for a job. She said, we also want to make sure they're representing us in the way we want to be represented. I found that if we have someone who is a good communicator and has a kindness and a warmth to them, we can usually teach them the skill set they're going to need. I said this during the interview, and I'm going to repeat it here. The truth is that the technical skills required to be successful in tourism are not that difficult. But what you can't teach is kindness. What you can't teach is warmth. What you can't teach is great communication and relatability. So I believe that whether you are running a destination marketing company like Rebekah, or running a tour company or any other endeavor, these are exactly the kinds of skills you need to be looking for. If you're hiring someone who's not kind, it's not going to work out well for you. If they just can't communicate with customers, it's not going to work out well for you. But if you find the right personality and the right cultural fit for your organization, you can probably train the person to do the things you need them to do. Great stuff there from Rebekah Snider. Well, we heard earlier today that social media has become the top source of travel inspiration for a lot of Americans. And, that brings up a topic I've been thinking a lot about And in light of recent events here in the US and things going on in our world, I want to skip the hot minute in today's episode and just take some time to speak to you on this topic from my heart. A few months ago, when we were planning this year's buyer's guide, I was talking with the team here, and I really wanted to write sort of an essay that I was going to call The Case Against Social Media. Now, the team talked me out of writing that article. It was probably the right decision. But I have a lot of questions, and I think they're questions that we as an industry really need to grapple with. I spent a lot of time this summer asking myself whether social media, on the whole, has done more harm to our world than good. And in recent weeks, those questions have become even more pressing for me. I'll be honest, I don't know the answer to that question. But I do know that we're seeing the negative repercussions of this collective social media addiction that we all have in very sharp relief, maybe more clearly than we ever have before. Here are some things we do know. We know that Facebook has been engineered to maximize tribalism. We know this. It's not a secret. We know that Twitter has been engineered to amplify outrage. We have the data. We have the receipts. We know that Instagram has been engineered to destroy the mental health of teenagers. We have reporting on this. It's very well sourced. Instagram knew the kind of impact their platform had on teenage girls especially, and they chose to keep doing what they were doing instead of making meaningful changes. We know that TikTok has been engineered to basically eliminate our ability to pay attention to anything. And we know that Snapchat has been engineered to exploit and harass people, including children, in some really unthinkable ways. Now, I'll be honest, the only social platform I use anymore is LinkedIn, but I got to say, even that has become kind of a drudgery. It's basically these days just full of hollow self-promotion and scammy advertisements and unwanted pitches. And I find myself opening LinkedIn less and less. So here's a question. Knowing how bad this situation is with all the social platforms, is it morally justifiable to continue using these systems? Is it justifiable? And the question becomes even more important for those of us in a travel business. Is it morally justifiable to continue using these platforms even if you don't do anything bad on them? Even if they're an important part of your sales and marketing strategy? Even if all your customers and competitors are using them? Is it morally justifiable? I don't know the answer to those questions either. But I do know that by participating in these systems, and especially if you advertise on them, we're all perpetuating these problems. And unfortunately, we're not only perpetuating the problems, we're actually enriching the very people who cynically chose to hack human nature and exploit our fears and maximize our frustrations in order to put more money in their own pockets. And maybe you can live with that. More and more people are saying they no longer can. Now, for myself, I can say confidently that I'm glad that my own attachment to social media has been broken. And there's not enough money in the world that could pay me to go back. Well, that's how I see things anyway. Of course, as always, you are welcome to disagree with me and we can still be friends. And whether you agree or disagree, we would love to hear from you. You can send your thoughts, questions, or the soapbox everybody wishes you would climb down from to podcast@grouptravelleader.com. I read every email that comes into that account. I really do love hearing from you. And hey, you never know. Your thoughts or ideas might just inspire a segment of a future episode. And hey, while you're in the mood to give us some feedback, would you do me a big favor? Would you go to your favorite podcast playing app? And if you haven't already subscribed to the show, then do that now. While you're there, if you could give us a rating and leave us a review, that would be so helpful. And I am deeply thankful to everyone who has done that so far. My thanks as well to Rebekah Snider for joining me today. On the next episode, we're going to have a featured conversation with somebody who almost certainly disagrees with me about the role of social media in travel. We're going to talk to Anna McKittrick of Vegan AF, who is going to tell us all about how she launched a tour brand around her personal passions and used Instagram to do it. That's a conversation you won't want to miss. Until then, though, remember this. At the end of the day, we are all on this trip together, so let's make it a good one. See you next time on Gather and Go. Gather and Go is hosted and executive produced by me, Brian Schul. Our publisher is Mac Lacey. Our creative team includes Danya Simmons, Ashley Ricks, and Rachel Crick. Our sales team is Talisa Reck and Ashley DeLucia. To advertise on the podcast, call Talisa at 859-253-0455. Gather and Go is a production of the Group Travel Leader. For more information on our podcast, magazines, and events, visit us online at grouptravelleader.com. This episode of Gather and Go was sponsored by the Malta Tourism Authority. Due to Malta's rich, ancient Christian heritage, it's only natural that the country has more than one church per square kilometer. In fact, there are enough churches in the archipelago to attend Mass in a different one almost every day for a whole year, a whopping 359 in total. Visit Malta to explore more history. Learn more at visitmalta.com.